lovely people, I'm Shaq and welcome. Today I'm going to show you how to put together a free goat pattern on my website. It's called the Felt Goat. And this is what the page with the pattern pieces on it. There are no actual assembly instructions, so this video is the only way that you have some help in the way in which it was meant to go together. If you've got experience putting these things together, it's pretty straightforward. So we've got 2 pieces here. I did not even show how many pieces. Maybe I should add that. So 2 of those, 1 of the belly, then we have 2 ears, a tail, a head gusset, and 2 horns. I did do the horns in a different color. That's just my preference. I've done one of these, made up one of these before, in which I used a brown heather instead of this gray heather, and I used this gray heather for the horns. I think the gray heather makes a great horn color, but if I'm doing the whole goat that way, you need something different to make the horns contrast the way they do on a real goat. Of course, if you want to make it monocolored, that's yours to do and totally acceptable. I like to print my pattern out on cardstock. It just, for me, makes it easier to handle. And I also like to use double stick tape, such as this. Not that I'm endorsing this brand or sponsored in any way. It's just to give you an example of the type of double stick tape that I'm using to hold the piece to the felt, because it does have a tendency to shift. And if it shifts in the process, you're likely to get legs that are narrower from, one cutting to the next. And I usually cut out the 2 pieces one at a time. I don't stack them up and cut them at the same time, because whenever I do this, my experience has been that the one on the bottom is smaller than the one on the top. And if I want them in the same size, that I need to cut them out individually, not 2 at a time. But that's my experience. You may have a completely different cutting method that works out for you. So do what you're comfortable with. The first thing you're going to want to do is take one side and match it up to the belly gusset. And that point right here is kind of your midline. So you can also get that midline just by folding it in half equally, putting in a pin right here to be able to mark where you're going to sew to. But you're going to sew around this first leg and then the second leg and stop right there at that other midpoint on the fold. I am stitching this up with a whip stitch, but you can use a blanket stitch, or you can even go along with a straight running stitch if you want to. You'll have to go just inside, and it will make your goat appear a little bit smaller, I think. There won't be as much room to stuff. And when you were cutting out your goat, hopefully you kept the scraps, and all the tiny little scraps you can use for stuffing. So I'll meet you back here when you've got this stitched up. Okay, I am to that midpoint on the gusset. I've knotted but left the thread needle attached so that it's easy to just continue on. As you sew, you're bound to run out of thread, so make sure that all your thread ends get buried on the inside, all your knots get buried on the inside, so that they don't show on the outside of the animal. So once you've got this done, you are now going to take the other side and stitch it in the same manner as the first side. Now, one of the things that you need to think about is where you want to stuff your goat from. Now, usually I leave the belly open, but today I'm going to see how it works out to leave the back open. I think it'll be fine, but that's the seam we're going to leave open today, is the back. So go ahead and stitch around your other side of your gusset to the second side of your goat. I just wanted to share this here. If you do end up with, say, the outside of your goat or your gusset being slightly different width than the other piece, so that you've got it uneven on the one side and even on the other side. So you've sewn up this side and now you need to sew up the other side. I will actually shift it to even it up and just hold it in place as I go across here, which basically just takes that extra distance and kind of just stitches it into the foot. And then you've lined up for the other side. And you can head on down the other side. Okay, we have stitched all the way up to that point, and I did actually put in a couple of stitches above that. But both, the whole gusset is now stitched all the way around to the two sides of the goat. So now we have these two sides of the goat. So we are going to stitch just over the rump and stop. We're going to, let me put a pin in to show. So we want to stop there so that we can leave this back open, and we'll come back once we've got that stitched. Okay, I knotted that off there and buried the thread on the inside. I actually put my needle into the thread, into the felt, not showing on the outside, but just on the inside, and to help keep that end of the thread buried until we've got it all stitched up. Now we're going to go in at the base of the neck here. So we've got a head gusset to work in up here. Now, actually, you don't have to have a head gusset. If it's too complicated, something you don't want to wrap your brain around, you can leave the head gusset out. But we're gonna, this is just a guesstimate. You want it on top of the head here, and it can go a little bit further back or it can go a little bit further forward. It will kind of change the look of the goat, but we are going to go right up to there. So we'll stitch to there and come back. All right, my thread's still attached. I'm going to slide one side, the point of the gusset, point of this gusset, up into that opening, and then just start stitching along one side of the gusset to attach the one side of it in. And you just kind of curve it around as you go. I think the head gusset is probably the only piece that really has, well, no, it's not the only piece. I take that back. Just remembered the horns. The only piece that has to be manipulated as you stitch. So it is on the body. It's the only one that doesn't just line up. You have to shift it as you go. And you're just going to stitch to that point, and then we'll come back. Okay, we're at that point. You can see it there. We stand it out, and we're going to stitch it to the other side. Sometimes, in fact, I think almost all times, it's better to go back to the back and stitch in the same direction that you stitched the first time. So I'm going to do that now. As you get to the end, the point, see you've come from the back again and come around on this gusset, make sure that your nose is lining up. And maybe do a little shift in your felt to make sure that it continues to line up. And then when you hit the end here of your gusset, which you can just continue on to the nose. And you're going to stitch around the nose and back down to where the belly gusset was started. Okay, so we have the whole area stitched up, and all that's left open is this back spot right here. So I like to use a pair of forceps, I guess, to stuff, and also realizing I forgot about that. This is wool from making a yarn beard, because part of the process you brush it out with like a curry comb. And I like to use the felt scraps in the legs, and being able to grab the pieces of felt and tuck them down in the legs makes it a lot easier to do. Until I have a nice firm little foot there. Probably won't have enough to do much more than get the feet stuffed with the scraps. I didn't save back a lot of scraps. But that's what you're going to do next, is you are going to stuff your goat until it feels the right firmness for what you want. I like to keep mine a little soft in the body, but you might want it firm all the way. Also, it helps if you can tie part of what's going into the leg into the body. It helps to keep that, it's going to want to do this action if you don't get the stuffing from, like a piece of stuffing from down the leg, or at least partially down the leg from the bottom, and have it on both sides. That helps stabilize that fold. Anyway, we'll get it stuffed and be back. We've got our goat all stuffed, and if you are giving this to a young child, you will want to embroider the eyes with a couple of French knots maybe, and you might want to do that before you close up the back, because it'll just make it easier to get that needle up in there to do those stitches. But I am going to now stitch up the back with just the same stitches that I've been using. Okay, the back is now stitched up. I did leave this attached because it happens to be in the perfect position to attach the flat edge of your tail right there. Stitch it on with a couple of stitches, and yeah, that's it. That's all you got to do. Stitch on your tail with a couple of stitches. So now our tail is attached. It's time to put the ears on. And I kind of like to squish on the seams, but it's not necessary. So your ears have a more rounded side and a more flat side. Be sure that you keep them oriented the same. So if you've got it flat up on the first ear, be sure you do that on the same on the second ear. You're going to take your needle that does not have a knot in the end, and just poke it into your goat's head, coming out approximately where you want those ears. You can use pins to mark where you want the ears and make sure that you've got them in the same place, like make sure they're the same from side to side, and that they're the same height. And I've got this one higher. That's the advantage of using the pins, to show you you've got them. But of course, you're going to have to watch out for these pokey ends now. So I'm going to bring that needle up where the pin is, making sure that my threads stay even in there. And then I will just tack this in place. So it's basically a knot. And I can remove this pin. It's one less pin to poke you. And I've left the ends out over here so I can give them a tug to make sure that we're not going anywhere. Okay, we're not going anywhere that end. Once we're in place, tug on that thread and snip it off. And it will just, the ends will just go up into the body or the neck or whatever, and not show. Then, without poking yourself with that pin that is still sticking out there, lay your ear on there and stitch it. Just kind of whip stitch the edge to the head. Not when you get to the bottom, and bury the ends on the inside. So I've got that first ear sewn in place, and you know, it's like stuck down like this because you whip stitched here, and you're gonna pick it up and kind of wiggle on it so that it stands out. Then I took my needle, I went straight across, and you see that the pin has been removed because it was in my way. And I'm just double checking again, looking from the top down and from the front to see that I'm coming out in the same spot that the other ear is. I'm going to go ahead and tack this thread in place so that it doesn't tug up on the other ear, because I am still attached on the other side. Okay, now making sure that my ear is oriented the same as the other ear. Sometimes it's just easier to come over here and match your ear. Take it around to this side, hold it in place, and stitch it the same whip stitch to the head as you used for the first ear, keeping it straight, or at the same angle as the other ear. I guess straight is not an accurate way to describe that. Okay, we have both our ears in place, and I'm going to go ahead and do eye placement. This really is best done with pins, just to get you that idea before you get started. You can use miniature buttons or beads, whatever you've got on hand. If you haven't embroidered it, embroidering is an awesome way to go for small children especially, but it's even for display and whatnot, it's still a great way to go. And you have more control maybe over the color, because sometimes these miniature buttons aren't easy to get in other colors. And I am going to do, I don't know if you can see that, yellow buttons for the eyes. So I just marked the one, and I'm gonna use my needle here to tell me. I am comparing the needle to the one pin that's in the place that I want. And it looks like it's coming out in about the right spot. So, same thing I did before. I'm going to tack it in place. And then I will stitch through the button. Hopefully I don't run into a problem of the button shaft hole not being big enough for the needle I've chosen. Okay. Sometimes, you know, you forget to check these things, and yep, that's a close one. I don't think I can go through more than once. So we're just going to go through that once. Come out where our pin is. Take the pin out, because evidently the thread's getting caught on it. There we go. Eye is in. And we'll do the other one. Since we're only going to get one pass through the button, we'll just go back over to this side and knot it on that. Pull them up so that they kind of get, the shaft kind of goes in a little maybe. I don't know if you can see that. And then I'm going to do the same tack again, or a knot, whichever is easiest for you. Take my thread, my needle back to the inside, pull it up, and snip off that thread. Okay, the goat has eyes, and now the last part, horns. And you may have to do a little finessing to get them to have all 4 feet on the floor. So you're going to take this horn. Now, what I'm going to say here is, like, I've got 2 here that are laying exactly the same. I'm going to take one, I'm going to flip it over and set it down, because I might not be able to remember which way I oriented the seam, and you want it the opposite. So I am going to line this flat edge up with my knot on the inside, and I'm going to stitch up with a whip stitch the longer edges together. Now, when you're looking at this, you can see that they're not the same length. So you are going to kind of finesse them together, which will cause the horn to curve. It's not actually that difficult, and you just kind of do it as you go along. You don't try and get it all matched up before you begin. As you can see here, I'm just holding it for the width of my fingers. And it is a little small to hang on to, but persevere, I guess. I don't usually work with a doubled thread, but lately the end has been getting wily and getting away from me, and it's just frustrating me. So I just thought I'd do this one with the thread doubled. And you know, there's a different set of challenges there. But overall, I think it's been easier. I'll come back when we get to the end. Once to the end, I did a little knot down there, but not, and then I'm going to just go in the end. And I'm going to go all the way out the other end with it, making sure that the needle isn't showing on either side and that it is in the center. You don't have to do that. You can just bury the thread and take it out through like halfway on the horn. But what I'm doing here is pulling it a little bit to get even more curve in the end of the horn. And now I've got a horn that I can get it to curve round. I was trying to remember whether I wanted the seam to the inside of the head or to the outside of the head, because that changes the curve, which way you want it to go. I think I want it to the outside. I think it looks better that way. So we want the curve to go towards that seam. Then I'm just going to take a couple tacking stitches to hold that, and then I'm going to do the same thing I did with the ears and stitch it on top of the head right up here between the ears, just forward of the ears by a little bit, and right on your gusset seam. So it should be with the horn, the gusset seam should be right in the middle of the horn. And I'll come back after we have actually finished up and attached the other horn as well. Here's our goat all finished. Both horns, eyes, ears, tail, all attached. And you can use him in a display if you have little elves or fairies, and they can ride him. He's sturdy enough to hold them and stay standing up. But yeah, maybe you want to make yourself a fairy to ride, because the fairy pattern is the same size as this doll, so that you could have a fairy riding your goat. Remember that this pattern is a free pattern on my website. The link will be in the description box. And I hope that you have a delightful day and a wonderful week. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.